It's that time of year again. Everyone knows that the holidays can become overwhelming quickly, so the sooner you get things done, the better. For both shoppers and businesses, the best time to score great deals during the holidays is Black Friday, Cyber Monday weekend. Shopify is the commerce platform behind millions of businesses around the world, from household names to entrepreneurs who are participating in their first Black Friday, Cyber Monday this year. This Black Friday, join thousands of new entrepreneurs hearing for the first time with Shopify. Sign up for your free trial today at shopify.com/promo. That's shopify.com/promo. Go to shopify.com/promo and make this Black Friday one to remember.
Medea and Prometheus, Cassandra and Sisyphus, fates and furies, hubris, nemesis, catharsis, sour grapes and golden apples, opening Pandora's box and flying too close to the sun. The myths and legends of ancient Greece reach into every aspect of modern life. Often misunderstood, always romanticized, and sometimes deliberately twisted. To understand their truth is to get a glimpse into the universal themes that connect us to the past and to one another. This is their story.
Άμα θέλεις μάνα, δίρε με, άμα θέλεις μάνα, δίρε με, πάλι εγώ θα βγαίνω στην αυλή για να βλέπω τον Αλεξανδρή.
Welcome to Podyssey. I'm Alex Andreou. Each week we will take one myth, one concept, person, place or theme from ancient Greece, take it apart, figure out its inner workings, trace its influence, juice it for its wisdom, reimagine, update, and put it back together, all shiny and new. We're currently working on Season 2 of Podyssey, due to launch in January 2026. This is a bonus episode to keep your appetite whetted. If you would like to support Podyssey, you can do so from as little as $5 a month on the platform Ko-fi, ko-fi.com/Podyssey. A lot of work goes into every episode, so I'm immensely grateful to everyone who supports this podcast, and grateful in advance for the support of those who will in future. Apples have caused all sorts of arguments in Greek mythology, too many really, considering apples did not exist in Greece at the time. Golden apples especially have been trouble from the get-go. If I were to give a title to this story, it would be Two Weddings and Multiple Funerals. The first wedding was that of Zeus, king of the gods, chief executive officer of the Olympus operation, to his queen and COO, Hera. Now, what would possess this sex-crazed maniac whose idea of monogamy would raise eyebrows in the court of Caligula to get married, you will never guess. That's right, sex. Zeus was the son of Kronos and Rhea, grandson of Gaia, the earth, and Uranus, the heavens. Hera was the daughter of Kronos and Rhea, granddaughter of Gaia and Uranus. Now, it may seem odd that a brother should have the hots for his sister, but as I have explained before, one must make allowances when it comes to creation myths, because they do, after all, usually start with just one couple. It may seem less peculiar if we take into account the fact that Kronos and Rhea were also brother and sister, and that Gaia, as well as being Uranus's wife, was also his mum. Or it may seem more peculiar, probably more. Look, we could do the Old Testament thing and gloss over the whole thing. Cain knew his wife, and she conceived and bore Enoch, is the only mention she gets in the Bible. Given that the generation above him consisted of just Adam and Eve, yeah, Cain knew his wife all right. I find the Greek approach refreshingly honest. Anywho, Zeus did fancy Hera, but Hera was determined to play hard to get. She was the only major royal his age in all of creation, so why wouldn't she? Zeus hatched a plan. He created a terrible thunderstorm and transformed himself into a little cuckoo that flew to Hera and sat on her lap, helpless, shivering, and soaked. "Oh, come here, little bird," Hera said, and popped the bird inside her tunic to warm him. Wham! Zeus transformed back into a hunk. "Hey, babe." And still Hera was like, "No! What will Grandmama and Great-Grandmama say?" Considering they were one and the same person, not much, I suspect. But Hera would hear none of it. "If you like it, then you should have put a ring on it," she kept repeating.
Have you ever been in love, me boys, or have you felt the pain? I'd sooner be in jail myself than be in love again. For the girl I loved was beautiful, I'd have you all to know. And I met her in the garden where the praties grow.
And so it was that the social occasion of the millennium, the original big fat Greek wedding, took place. The location was the Garden of the Hesperides, the three goddesses of dusk, daughters of Nyx, the night. A paradise on earth, the most beautiful, the most exotic location on the westernmost end of the world, right where the sun sets. This also began the whole destination wedding craze, by the way.
I'm tired of single life, and if you've no objection, sure I'll make you my sweet wife. She answered me right modestly, then curtsied very low. "Oh, you're welcome to the garden where the praties grow."
According to Callimachus, the feast lasted 300 years, which seems a tad excessive. After about 200 years, the Hesperides started getting everyone's coats and telling them how good they were to have made it. After another 50, they went upstairs to bed and left them to it. Around 299 years into festivities, Gaia turned up, fashionably late. "Grandmama, Great-Grandmama," Hera said, "I was afraid you wouldn't make it, and miss my baby's big day. I have brought you something very special," Gaia said with a glint, and pushed out of her soil an apple tree laden with gleaming gold apples. "Oh, wow!" exclaimed Hera. "We hadn't even registered for an ornamental apple tree. Look at this, darling." "Thank you, Nana. I guess we'll have to buy our own gravy boat. But this is just as useful. I'm glad you like it. Only, Nan, you do know that this is just the location for the wedding, right? And what was I meant to do? Put it in a big pot? Well, it's a little bit like giving us a present we can't take out of the function room at the Athens Hilton. I can't move it, dear. It's a tree." Zeus stepped in at that point. "This is tremendous. Just what we wanted. Isn't it, darling? Isn't it, darling?" "Yes, tremendous," Hera repeated, walking away. "We'll just use the measuring jug for the gravy." At this point, maybe out of awkwardness, maybe because the kokoretsi was finished, guests had started making a steady beeline for the parking lot. The Hesperides came downstairs from their nap, relieved to see everyone leaving. Then they clocked the tree. "I guess it gives us an excuse to visit," Zeus offered lamely. "You don't mind guarding it, do you?" "Mind? Why would we mind?" Egli, the eldest of the sisters, responded. "It's not like this thing will attract every minor hero wanting to go on a quest, is it? It's not like every trickster minor deity will be queuing up to steal the apples. It's not like we were ever planning to go out, ever again." Sensing that things were about to get a bit Egli, Gaia offered a solution, a bit of extra security, as it were. She called on another grandchild of hers, Ladon, a dragon-like serpent with 100 heads, 50 of which would keep watch at all times, while the other 50 rested. And they all lived happily, well, for a bit. The second of the weddings in this story takes place millennia later, and it is between the minor hero and king of Thea, Peleus, and the major water nymph, Thetis, whose son, Achilles, will in time become more famous than either of them. But I am skipping ahead. The couple invited the whole A-list of ancient Greece to their wedding, with one exception, Eris, another daughter of the primordial Nyx and goddess of discord and strife. Thetis, who is into spirituality, crystals, tarot and such, just thinks Eris is a bit of a downer, a negative aura, a dark energy, especially since she insists on bringing her children along. Ponos, hardship, limos, famine, algia, pain, ati, delusion, dysnomia, lawlessness, pseudia, lies, and phony, murder, to name but a few. Some mothers do have them. In retrospect, not inviting Eris is not a smart choice. It's like throwing a big glitzy party for all world leaders and inviting everyone except Donald Trump. Anyone sensible will tell you that you invite Eris, stuff her full of ouzo and pasticcio, let her have a couple of arguments, throw up and fall asleep on the sofa. True to form, Eris, who is very, very bad, or maybe just deliciously good at this stuff, pretends to visit with her sisters, the Hesperides, pinches a golden apple from the garden, inscribes it "for the fairest," and leaves it on the banquet table smack dab between Hera, Athena, and Aphrodite. And thus begins a row that makes the Kardashians look like a well-adjusted, loving family, which Paris is asked to resolve and ends with a Trojan War. How do you like them apples?
Plant a little garden in your own backyard. There's so much that you can grow. Plant some nice potatoes and some bread.
And so this innocent gift, this symbol of nuptial bliss, this humblest of fruits, acquires huge meaning and keeps popping up, first in Greek mythology, but eventually all over the place, from Hercules' labours to the head of William Tell's son, from the Old Testament to Snow White, from Atalanta's race to Isaac Newton's head, from Idun in Asgard to King Arthur's Avalon.
In your own backyard, let them grow from coast to coast. All you lovely charmers, help our busy farmers.
After the break, I unpack this symbolism and delve into it with expert help. What is it about apples that makes them such a perfect symbolic vessel for everything, from youth and fertility to sin and death?
Freedom. Plant a little garden in your own backyard.
The Who's Down in Who Newville were making their list, but some didn't know Walmart has the best brands for their gifts.
What about toys? Do they have brands kids have been wanting all year?
Yep, Barbie, Tony's, and Lego. Gifts that will make them all cheer.
Do you mean they have all the brands I adore?
They have Nintendo, Nespresso, Apple, and more.
What about...
So the Who answered questions from friends till they were blue. Each one listened and shouted, "From Walmart? Who knew?" Shop gifts from top brands for everyone on your list in the Walmart app.
Let's address the glaring issue first, shall we? Apples come from Tian Shan, the mountain range in Central Asia, in modern-day Kyrgyzstan, between China and Kazakhstan. The first apples are not acknowledged by any historical source to have come to Europe until early Roman times. So it stands to reason that the apples we're talking about here weren't apples at all. I asked cultural historian Debbie Chalice to help me out with this conundrum.
Well, that's an interesting question because no is the short answer. But I think there's reasons for why it is depicted as an apple. The Greek is ambiguous about the actual word for apple. It can mean all kinds of different fruits, quince, apricots, those kind of fruits that you might identify with the Mediterranean. I've seen accounts that have suggested it might be a citrus fruit or something that wasn't widely available. And the Hebrew equally is ambiguous, but I think it's depicted as an apple in Northern Europe because we wouldn't have had apricots or those kinds of fruit. And so the apple becomes a fruit that everybody knows, I guess. Certainly in Britain, Northern Europe, France, Belgium, where a lot of the earliest artwork was done, people would know an apple tree. So I think that's a reason why it becomes an apple. But I think it's also interesting about what the apple or the word milos means can also be beauty. And then that's when you get onto the sort of golden apple that's even more beautiful, more than an apple. That's a thing in itself. It's an object of desire in itself, not just about what it leads to. And also that there's a kind of class thing about that as well. If you think about who had access to unusual food, the wealthier classes. So to have a golden apple is also saying something about status. And if you're immortal, of course, that's the highest status, isn't it? To be a god or a nymph, dwell in what we might call the Fey lands, is to have access to more unusual things.
A peddler once was a passing by. His cart with fruit was laden high, and as he drove along he cried across a village green, "Oh, apples and peaches and cherries."
The famous Farnese Hercules, a magnificently sexy marble statue in which he is hiding the golden apples behind him, and trust me, you will want to have a look back there, appeared to be clearly peaches. Chrysomilo, quite literally golden apple in Greek, used to be the name for apricot, still is in parts of Cyprus and the Heptanes. A plum in Greek used to be called kokimilo, which means apple of the cuckoo, and koromilo, the Greek word for gauges, means wild apple.
A young lad beckoned from the door. He bought some fruit and then bought more. His longing eyes were begging for the lovely maid to stay, crying apples and peaches and cherries.
It gets no less confusing in other languages. The equivalent of apple appears to have been the generic word for fruit at some point. An orange is called tapuz in Hebrew, a contraction of the words tapuach zahav, or golden apple. Even in German, while Apfelsine, Chinese apple, is now the dominant name for oranges, they used to be called pomeranze, or orange apple. In Italian, on the other hand, golden apple, or pomodoro, is what a tomato is called. The first mention in English is by King Alfred in the 9th century in the idiom apple of my eye, which originally meant simply the pupil, but by then had acquired the sense of something very, very precious. Whatever the original fruit, ultimately, Debbie is right. The reason that the apple idea took hold and persists is both its universality and its timeless association with mysticism. And while it is fun to speculate that it was probably not an apple, actually, it might have been. The Greeks did have established trade routes to the Middle East, which also traded with Central Asia, where apples grew, and several varieties are golden yellow. Isn't that the point of a golden apple? That it is foreign, exotic, rare, unobtainable. The Judgment of Paris is probably the most pivotal of the several myths in which these apples make an appearance. Zeus delegates the decision of who is the fairest among his wife and 2 daughters to this shepherd, who Zeus knows, but Paris doesn't, is actually a prince of Troy. Hera offers him power and status, offers to make him king of Europe and Asia. Athena offers him divine wisdom and unmatched skill in combat. Aphrodite offers him the most gorgeous girl in the world. Have a guess what the 17-year-old shepherd chose. It wasn't wisdom. What Aphrodite neglected to mention is that the woman in question, Helen of Sparta, about to become Helen of Troy, was already married to a king from Greece's most powerful clan. The rest is history. They don't own that phrase, you know. And so the judgment of Paris begins with a chain of events that leads to most protagonists' annihilation on both sides of that 10-year war. And even those words seem to me are ambivalent. The judgment of Paris. Yes, Paris is doing the judging, but his choice is also a judgment on him and on human weakness. A favorite of painters. I talked to Debbie about the symbolism in 3 notable depictions.
For me, the painting that sums up the Judgment of Paris is the one by Rubens, Peter Paul Rubens, which is in the National Gallery in London. It's often called the fleshpot painter because the way he paints women, they would not fit a supermodel dress or that kind of image. In this painting, you have a shepherd actually holding the golden apple. So you've got an idea of innocence, this pastoral scene. And behind him, there's Paris looking at these 3 goddesses, trying to choose which one is the most beautiful. But they're very fleshy. It's almost an excuse for them to get their clothes off. This is partly why this scene is done so many times, because it's actually a good excuse to show the gorgeousness of these 3 goddesses with this man gazing at them. And he decides on Aphrodite and having the hand of the most beautiful woman in the world, which of course is Helen of Troy, which brings disaster. There's a sense of this kind of pastoral scene, these beautiful goddesses, but in the end it's the goddesses who hold the power. And I think that's one of the ambiguities with the Golden Apple. Another painting, 150 years later, by William Etty, Regency period 1825. And this one, Paris is more scantily clad. He's got a kind of loinclothy thing going on. But he's looking at the 3 goddesses. Aphrodite is the only one that you can actually see fully nude, almost. In this painting, he's actually handing her the golden apple. In this one, he's definitely made the decision. And you can see Athena about to get quite cross. I find this one really interesting, and it's also based on engravings by John Flaxman in the Iliad. So there's a kind of continuity of this re-interest or re-engagement with Greek text and image at the same time, which is happening a lot in the kind of early 19th century and the Regency period. A really bizarre one is The Judgment of Paris by G.A. Story from 1877. It's in Glasgow, and Story was kind of not very good pre-Raphaelite type painter, a bit Malay-ish. And they have 3 women in bustles, and they're kind of what was called the S-bend dresses, with their hats on, and they're by an apple tree, and there's a young boy. He's got a horse that he pretends to ride on wheels next to him in a chair. He's got an apple in his hand, and all 3 of them want to get it. 3 mature women vying for the attentions of a little boy. And it's so odd. I find it very odd. Obviously, there's the horse is probably a reference to the Trojan horse. There's this idea that this disaster going to happen to this boy. I mean, I find it very odd from a cultural construction. I mean, I think there's a thing about older women being toxic slightly here. The modern nature of it seems to be implying that. There's a kind of degradation that is going to have to go through, losing his innocence. Victorian thing about childhood as well. They were kind of obsessed with the end of childhood and when did adulthood begin? And a lot of it bound up with kind of sex and desire.
Of course, the die is cast at the wedding earlier, when the apple of discord is left on that table, and it is no coincidence that this happens to be the marriage of Thetis, who will give birth to Achilles. Achilles and Paris, between them, bring catastrophe to the Greeks and Trojans alike. But the truth is that, like in so many of these myths, the fault does not lie primarily with the humans involved. It is the snub to the goddess of strife that causes the war, not Paris's judgment. It is the feud between Hera, Athena, and Aphrodite. It is Zeus's cowardice in choosing. Any of them could have avoided it by acting more graciously or more courageously. Was there a better choice Paris could have made, when any choice would make an ally of one god and an enemy of 2? The gods bicker and mortals pay the price. Alfred Tennyson got it. His poem, Inoni, tells these events from the point of view of Paris's wife, that's right, Paris was also married, who is dying of grief at being abandoned. I wish that somewhere in the ruined folds among the fragments tumbled from the glens or the dry thickets, I could meet with her. The abominable, the uninvited came into the fair Pelean banquet hall and cast the golden fruit upon the board and bred this change, that I might speak my mind and tell her to her face how much I hate her presence, hated both of gods and men. Does Paris even have a choice? Could he say no to Zeus? Does he welcome the task? In Thomas Arne's opera The Judgment of Paris, he begs Hermes to save him from this excess of joy. No man can do this, he says. The human brain is just not equipped to judge gods. Actions have consequences. It is exclusion that doesn't work. The attempt to deny that life contains darkness, even amid joyous occasions. Instead of keeping the peace, just like excluding Maleficent in Sleeping Beauty, it is the decision to pretend one can protect happiness from any negativity that results in catastrophe. And it seems to me there is also a misogynist trope under the surface here, about women being at odds with each other and all this strife that causes to poor innocent men. If I cast my mind back to the tales of Persephone, Cassandra, and Medusa, to the notion that female deities in Greek mythology were a disaggregation of more powerful earth mother goddesses that predated patriarchy, we find that this splitting apart is designed not only to diminish them, but to put them in competition with each other. Because it is always women in charge of these apples. In almost every permutation, from the Hesperides to Eve, it is always women guarding them, wanting them, offering them. To men, the apples are almost incidental. They are a means to something else. They are sent to steal them as part of a labor, or judge what woman deserves them, or they're offered their sin. Or, as in the myth of Atalanta, they use the apples to get the girl. The huntress Atalanta is abandoned on a mountain as an infant to die by her father Prince Iasus of Arcadia, who desired a son. But she is nursed by a she-bear whose cubs have been killed, and grows up to be unmatched in her running speed and her skill with a bow. Two centaurs combined try to impose themselves on her and meet their death. She is the only woman to be invited to join the Argonauts. She turns them down. And when a gigantic, monstrous wild boar is terrorizing Calydon, a call is put out to all the Greek heroes of the era, including A-lister Theseus. But it is Atalanta who fatally injures the beast with her arrow. When Iasus eventually recognizes her, he tries to marry her off. "Why not?" says Atty. "If any suitor beats me in a foot race, I will marry him. Any that lose, I will kill. Many try, they all fail." Hippomenes, a young hero who is desperately in love with her, prays to Aphrodite for help. The goddess of love, who doesn't much like virginity, gives him 3 golden apples to drop during the race as a distraction. Atalanta picks up the first and recovers her lead. Ditto with the second, but when she slows down to pick up the third, Hippomenes wins the race. Although there is much in the myth to suggest that maybe Atalanta wanted to lose this one.
Atalanta is an interesting female figure in the ancient world anyway. She's a woman who manages to get away with not marrying, says to her father, "I'm not going to marry anybody unless they can beat me in a race." Again, it's a very popular visual depiction in art in the 16th, 17th century, partly because there's this idea about it warning against greed and sensual temptation, because ultimately, although Atalanta loses the race, the story goes on to say that they were obsessed with each other physically and they have sex in a temple. So this kind of desire that she has for the golden apples is also a desire for Hippomenes' body and his physical prowess. So it's, again, a scene that is depicted a lot in the Baroque. I'm going to point to probably the most famous one and probably the most interesting, actually, because it's very much on the two who become lovers. It's not the whole scene, because often it's a big set dressing, like Judgment of Paris. This is just Hippomenes and Atalanta. It's at the moment, she's picked up one apple, she's picking up another apple. He is just ahead. They are both completely naked, but with floating drapery around them. I mean, essentially, where Hippomenes' drapery kind of literally just covers his genitals, basically, everything else is on display. The focus is very much on them and their voluptuousness and their beauty, and this moment when she's caught by the apple. So again, the apple is a symbol of desire, a symbol that is attractive, but where does it lead to? The other interesting thing about this painting is that at the time it was very controversial. It had to have a kind of publication around it that actually gave a Christian message to it. And part of it, I think, is to do with this nudity and the fact that it's almost seen as a good thing. You don't have a sense of impending doom. They basically have sex in a temple to Cybele. So they have this divine punishment. They're turned into lions. But then is a lion a bad thing to be turned into? I'm not sure, because they can't keep their hands off each other. And that's what you kind of get looking at this painting. The fact that they're both so nude, the fact that they're both doing something physical, you get a real sense that they are physically attracted to each other. So it's a very sensual painting. And I think that sensuality caused problems for Rennie. For me, again, the other interesting thing about Atalanta is it's a woman doing physical activity. And that's quite rare. The idea of a female athlete, that's a new thing. So actually showing a woman who's a hunter, who's a powerful athlete, I think is really interesting. And there's a statue that's in the Smithsonian American Art Museum, which is just a small thing, but it shows her on her own, just her running. Yes, she's picking up an apple, so there is that symbol there. But the fact she's running and there's something physical about it, it's from 1958, just as that counter reaction to women being part of employment and the war and all of that, she's depicted as running in her own right. She's not answerable to anybody else. And to me, that's quite a different depiction.
Apples then are carnal desire, a theme that would persist into Christian traditions, the sort of lust that has the capacity to lead innocence astray, a youthful passion that just cannot be resisted. And even though Handel changed much of the story of Atalanta in his eponymous opera, it is bursting at the seams with desire, lust, and passion. Hercules completed 12 feats, 12 labours. The 11th involved stealing 3 apples from the Hesperides. There are several versions of how he did that, and we will come back to them in another season in detail. Suffice it to say for now that most of them involved various kinds of sexy, muscular deceptions. Paradise is nice and all, but quite quiet. A bit of beefcake is never unwelcome, it seems. This did not go unnoticed by artists.
Experience a membership that backs what you're building with American Express Business Platinum. Unlock over $3,500 in business and travel value annually with statement credits on select purchases from brands like Dell, Hilton, and Adobe, and other benefits. American Express Business Platinum. There's nothing like it. Based on total potential value of statement credits on select purchases and other benefits, enrollments required, monthly and other limits and terms apply. Learn more at americanexpress.com/business-platinum.
There's 2 ways you can depict the Hesperides. One is like latent, languid women lying around, looking like they've just smoked a lot of opium. Or you can have the man who comes in between them all, who creates a kind of drama. And this, of course, is Hercules, and he's after the golden apple. And it's quite different in terms of how he's depicted. He's in his 40s, he's muscular. I think you described him as a bear. You can cut that out if you like. It's quite a different depiction. It's much more like Zeus type figure that you might find in classical sculpture. And the women in the paintings are often fully clothed. They're not languid. They're actually interested by him. So you kind of have these two images of these kind of languid women, and then a man comes into their midst and they're all over him, interested in him. He is the centre of attention. He's the nude centre of attention. And you're not quite sure who has the power here, because in some ways he has the power because he comes into it. He's muscular, he's powerful, but he's the one naked. He's the one surrounded by women. So, and some of them, you're not quite sure if he's actually wanting to be there. The one by Pellegrini, he's completely naked. They seem more desperate for his attention than he is for theirs. And I think that's really interesting, because the Hesperides is this idea of an Eden. It's the nearest that you get to the kind of Greek idea of a kind of heavenly place as a garden. But you kind of get a sense that they're bored, and then Hercules turns up, and that's a bit exciting.
But apples are not meant for mortals, not even demigod heroes. Aphrodite took personal charge of getting them back and returning them to the Hesperides, who were smoking a cigarette and seemed dishevelled and oddly relaxed. Oh, did he? Oh, yes, sure, put them over there. There is something very fleshy about apples. The desirable glossy skin hides beneath it something pure and sweet and life-giving, and almost always connected to youth. The apple whole is a symbol of a woman's breasts, the apple halved of the female reproductive system. It is apples that divert Dorothy from the yellow brick road. It is apples that give Aladdin away to Jasmine. Consider the film trope of biting into an apple, so often associated with cockiness. From Captain Kirk in Star Trek to Lieutenant Kaffee in A Few Good Men, Leonidas in 300 or Will in Good Will Hunting, the young love story subplot in Sunset Boulevard or Blue-Eyed Samurai, the repressed passion of a haunting in Venice. Apples are health, vitality, fertility, life, actually the gift of life, being as they are so often offered. An apple a day keeps the doctor away. An apple is what a teacher's pet leaves on his or her desk, the most innocent of bribes. Think about the hundreds of video games in which restorative health appears as a little icon of an apple. Yeats depicts an eternity of a couple's happiness in the Song of the Wandering Aegis by saying that the lovers will pluck till time and times are done the silver apples of the moon, the golden apples of the sun. Many scholars believe that Hercules' first 10 labours are all about him proving himself as the greatest ever human hero. The last 2, stealing the golden apples and descending to the underworld to bring back Cerberus, are thought to be the process of his deification, his acquisition of eternal vitality, followed by his defeating death. Norse mythology embraces this notion entirely. The gods of Asgard are not eternal in the same way that other deities are. Idun, goddess of youth, provides them with her apples which restore them to youth every day. Only Idun knows how to tend to the tree. When a snow giant abducts her, the gods begin to age and weaken until Loki gets her back. A leitmotif is a repeated musical phrase that represents a person or thing. Think of Darth Vader's theme in Star Wars. In Wagner's Ring Cycle, one of the most important leitmotifs is that of the golden apples. In the first part of the saga, 3 very Hesperides-like maidens guard the gold in the Rhine, and we first meet Freya, who seems to contain Idun, keeper of the gods' apples. In the 4th opera of the cycle, The Twilight of the Gods, Valtrauta describes to Brunhilde the state of Asgard without those apples. Awestruck and shrinking sit the gods in silence. Because you see, if apples are life, then they are also the opposite. The negative space created by their absence is death. Apples are the most appropriate offering to Mexican folk Catholic figure Santa Muerte, Our Lady of Holy Death. The passage of time is so often depicted by an apple decaying. It is how Doctor Strange learns to manipulate time. Red for good guys, green for bad guys, generally speaking. Ajax in Deadpool, Malfoy in Harry Potter, Barbossa in the Pirates of the Caribbean, Death Note, Jafar. They all bite into apples too greedily, too violently. The crunch sounds like the breaking of bones. Juice and pulp rolls down their ugly chin. Even more of a trope, the really bad guys, like Ramsay in Game of Thrones, either cut slices with a knife and bring them to their mouth dangerously, or peel the apple wastefully, malevolently. Cocky young guys, you see, are compelled to take a bite out of life. The wicked want to flail it and cut into it with a knife.
Still lives always have meaning, and I'm thinking here of Paul Cézanne's Painted Apples, Still Life with Apples. It's pointing to all the myths around apples. It's pointing to, yes, the Garden of Eden. It's pointing to the golden apple, all of the derivations in which it's used, the Judgment of Paris, the Atalanta race, all of that. And that's what I think so interesting about his apples, his still life. It's like such an innocent, it's 8 apples just there. And they seem really innocent. They're just there. But you take a bite of an apple and it becomes something else. It looks different. You can see it's an apple more, I think. Are they desirable because they look innocent? Thinking of the Disney cartoon of Snow White, she is taken in by the apple. The witch or her stepmother gives her the apple. She takes a bite out of it and she holds it. And that apple becomes something dangerous. Once you've bitten that apple, you're in trouble. So apples in themselves, you can never just see an apple in a painting or in an image or even a photograph because of the nature of the appleness, if you like. Given the iconic nature of what that means, it will always mean something. The Son of Man by Magritte from 1946 has a man in a bowler hat looking like he's by a sea, by a ledge, and there's just an apple wandering in front of his face. It almost looks like he's taking a bite out of it and it balancing, completely obscuring him. It's obviously a surreal image. He's in a suit. He doesn't look like he should be by the seaside, if that's what it is, but it's pulling all these different elements together. And it's saying an apple is never just an apple.
It is precisely in that duality that apples have their meaning. Magritte himself said about his painting The Son of Man, whose title hints at original sin, everything we see hides another thing. We always want to see what is hidden. And what is hidden inside an apple is dangerous. Its pips contain amygdalin, a cyanide and sugar compound that degrades into the poisonous hydrogen cyanide. Life contains risk. Flesh can be dangerous. For Snow White, This was extremely literal, just as it was for codebreaker Alan Turing. Tormented by the country he had saved for being gay, he killed himself by eating an apple laced with cyanide, the very substance it contains in trace amounts. A symbolism echoed in Christopher Nolan's Oppenheimer, but aborted at the last minute. The consequence, instead, is to poison the planet. Mushroom clouds look an awful lot like the core of an eaten apple, don't they? Religion, of course, does not brook ambiguity. So the good book separates the tree of life from the tree of knowledge. This is good, that is bad. You can have eternity or knowledge, but not both. Eve made her choice, knowledge. So did Isaac Newton. Adam regretted it halfway through swallowing. Men's Adam's apples becoming a constant reminder of the bit we couldn't quite swallow, the knowledge we could not quite internalize. Poet Rainer Maria Rilke mocks the sentiment. Tout se passe à peu près comme si l'on rapprochait à la pomme d'être bonne à manger, mais il reste d'autres dangers. Everything that happens is like we blame the apple for being delicious to eat. But there are other dangers, he continues, to leave it on the branch, to chisel it from marble, or worst of all, to make it out of wax. Another poet, George Venn, disagrees. He refuses to harvest the orchard in the world according to apples, and concludes, "One more year I gave my life away to hunger. All winter I will see these apples I let go fly and feed and pray around me in the snow." The suggestion being that just because you didn't eat the apple doesn't mean it didn't give life to other creatures. That may well be the case, but that entire poem is about the pain of resisting picking them. So on this, Venn and Rilke agree. Apples beg to be plucked and bitten into. But there may be merit to resisting the urge, because one thread that runs through every single tale is that the most desirable gifts always come with strings attached.
Så försvinn vi samman. Kom, bring mig under skyggen.
Eudora Welty, whose most successful short story collection is The Golden Apples, said in an essay that, in writing as in life, connections of all sorts lie in wait of discovery. They give out their signals to the Geiger counter of the imagination once it is drawn into the right field. Are apples then a reminder that life is very simple and simultaneously very complicated? Are they about the interconnectedness of everything? In 1965, the Museum of Modern Art in New York, the Big Apple, mounted a huge Magritte retrospective that revolved around apples. Around the same time, Paul McCartney became obsessed with the artist. He bought his first Magritte in 1966. In 1967, the year Magritte died, McCartney acquired one of Magritte's apples, inscribed with the words, "Au revoir." That same year, the Beatles' Apple label was created in homage to Magritte. That November, the whole company was renamed Apple Music Limited, which then became Apple Corps in 1968. 10 years later, while on a flight to the Big Apple, George Harrison noticed an ad in an in-flight magazine for Apple Computers, a small startup created 2 years before by Jobs and Wozniak. The Beatles sued them for copyright infringement and settled out of court, agreeing that Apple Corps would not venture into electronics as long as Apple Computers stayed out of music. Apple Computers, of course, didn't stay out of music. The apple of discord, the Macintosh, became a favorite for music creators, and then came the iPod and iTunes. This locked the two companies into a series of legal battles which lasted nearly 3 decades. The final settlement came in 2007. That same year, Steve Jobs stood on a San Francisco stage in front of 7,500 people and launched the very first iPhone, that Apple-engraved device that would change the world. Demonstrating it, he clicked on the iPod icon, scrolled down to the Beatles, and chose With a Little Help from My Friends.
I will give my love an apple without head or cord. I will give my love a house without head or door. I will give...
But why had Jobs chosen the apple as a logo? Apocryphal tales for years suggested it was in honor of Alan Turing, the bite out of it being a joke on the memory unit, byte with a Y.
Lock it without any key. My head is the apple without any...
The truth is both simpler and more charming. Steve Jobs chose the apple during a trip to an apple orchard while he was on a fruitarian diet. He felt an apple represented simplicity with hidden sophistication. The bite was added to it by designer Rob Janoff to provide a sense of scale, because he realized without it, the outline could be a peach or a plum or a cherry. And that rather prosaic explanation is also beautifully elegant, because it points to the universality and simplicity of an apple, but also the mystery inside, its equivocal nature, its duality. An apple is almost the liminal fruit, and always, always means something else. And that final, most modern story also hints at the fact that an apple is not really fully an apple until someone has taken a bite out of it. You can sign up to support the show for as little as $5 a month on ko-fi.com/Podyssey. Creative input, sage advice, and expert contributions by 4 veritable goddesses: Alex Andreou, Debbie Chalice, Linda Marrick, and Dr. Ruth Smith. Music by Mariana Sangeeta. Artwork by Simona Canelu. A playlist of all the music in the episode, as well as links to the films and works of art mentioned, can be found in the show notes. Podyssey is an audio production by Cooler Heads, written and presented by Alex Andreou.
Στην αυλή για να βλέπω τον Αλεξανδρή, για να βλέπω τον Αλεξανδρή.